Forget your four-leaf clovers and broken mirrors. Out in the Wild West, people clung to far stranger beliefs. Ever heard of a haunted mine that could drive a man mad? Or a ghostly cowboy who ensured no one dared to cheat at cards? If you think carrying a rabbit's foot for luck is peculiar, wait until you hear what gold prospectors kept hidden beneath their bedrolls. In a land where law was scarce and danger lurked behind every cactus, superstition thrived. Whether cowboys, outlaws, or fortune seekers, everyone had their own strange rituals, wild legends, and downright absurd customs. When survival was a daily gamble, people sought any edge they could find, or at least a way to explain their misfortunes. Some swore that a coyote's howl could summon a storm, while others believed a certain canyon was cursed because a prospector refused to share his lucky pickaxe. The American frontier was as rich in colorful superstitions as it was in gold rushes and gunfights. So saddle up. We're about to ride through some of the most baffling superstitions and legends ever to emerge from the Old West. Just be sure to steer clear of black cats, or worse, black horses crossing your path. 1. Superstition of the rabbit's foot. If there was one thing the rough and tumble folk of the Wild West believed in as much as their trusty revolvers, it was luck. And when it came to luck, nothing topped the rabbit's foot. Yes, you heard that right. Hardened frontiersmen who survived shootouts, rattlesnake bites, and unforgiving landscapes pinned their hopes on the severed foot of a small, fluffy rabbit. Strange? Absolutely. But in the days before convenience stores stocked Lucky Charms, you had to make do. The belief in the rabbit's foot as a token of good fortune dates back centuries, with roots in European and African traditions. However, once the superstition crossed the Atlantic and settled into the hands of American pioneers, it truly flourished. Frontier life was harsh and unpredictable, and people clung to any belief that might offer a sliver of control over their fates. Cowboys, in particular, found the rabbit's foot appealing. After all, if a rabbit could outrun predators and survive in the wild, perhaps carrying a piece of it would help them dodge bullets, strike gold, or, at the very least, win a high-stakes poker game. But not just any rabbit's foot would do. To be truly lucky, it had to come from the left hind leg of a rabbit caught under a full moon. Bonus points if the unfortunate creature was captured by a cross-eyed person, though why this detail mattered remains a mystery lost to time. Once acquired, the charm became a constant companion. Cowboys tucked them into their pockets, tied them to their saddles, and even wore them around their necks. You could say it was the 19th century equivalent of smartphone, except instead of checking the weather, it was supposed to keep bad luck at bay. But like most superstitions, the rabbit's foot wasn't just about luck. It was about comfort. In a world where every ride across the prairie could be your last, carrying a little extra fortune, no matter how peculiar, felt like a small step toward survival. 2. Never close a knife someone else opened. Among the many peculiar beliefs that thrived on the frontier, few were as steadfastly observed as the rule. Never close a knife that someone else opened. At first glance, it seems like an odd concern. But in the West, where superstition was taken as seriously as a duel at high noon, this belief was enough to cause tension in many. A saloon and cattle ranch. According to legend, closing a knife someone else had opened was a surefire way to bring bad luck to both parties. And this wasn't just about a run of poor poker hands or a spoiled meal. This kind of bad luck could mean a rattlesnake bite, a spooked horse throwing you into a ravine, or a herd of cattle stampeding off a cliff. In a world where life was already hanging by a thread, no one was willing to risk inviting extra misfortune. Some cowboys even believed this act could sever the bond between two people, an ominous thought in a land where trust and loyalty were as valuable as a steady hand with a revolver. The origins of this superstition likely stem from both practical concerns and deep-rooted folklore. Knives were essential tools, used for everything from skinning game to defending oneself. A well-crafted knife was often a prized possession, sometimes even a family heirloom. If someone handed you an open knife, closing it yourself might have been seen as presumptuous or worse, disrespectful. So next time you find yourself in a frontier saloon or a modern-day ranch, for that matter, Think twice before shutting a blade that isn't yours. It might just save you from a little bad luck or an angry cowboy's glare. 3. The legend of Pecos Bill. Pecos Bill isn't just a frontier hero. He's the king of American tall tales, a figure whose exaggerated exploits make even the most daring cowboys look like mere greenhorns. According to legend, Bill was born in the 1830s but was separated from his family as a baby. Instead of being raised by humans, he was adopted by a pack of coyotes. That's right, the fiercest cowboy of the Old West learned his survival skills from the wild, growing up tough and fearless under the watchful eyes of his four-legged family. One of Pecos Bill's most famous feats? Wrestling a tornado. While most folks would flee from such a deadly force of nature, Bill did the opposite. He lassoed it, jumped on its back, and rode it across the plains like a bucking bronco. Some versions of the story claim he rode that twister all the way to Kansas before finally letting it go. In tribute, the tornado supposedly returned to visit him now and then, just to remind folks of the time Bill tamed the wind itself. And that's not all. According to legend, Bill once wrangled a mountain lion and turned it into his pet. He even gave a name, Sassafras, and trained it to help herd cattle. Because why use a horse when you can ride a ferocious predator instead? Of course, no tale of Pecos Bill would be complete without his most audacious stunt, roping the Rio Grande. As the story goes, Bill was so bored one day that he decided to lasso an entire river. Not only did he succeed, but he allegedly tied it into a neat knot and turned it into the largest watering trough the West had ever seen. But even larger than his legendary strength was his heart. Pecos Bill eventually fell head over spurred boots for Slewfoot Sue, a woman as fearless and adventurous as he was. Their romance was just as legendary as his exploits, wild, untamed, and filled with the same kind of exaggerated charm that made Pecos Bill a true icon of frontier folklore. Like all great tall tales, the story of Pecos Bill ends with a twist, leaving us to wonder, was he just a myth, or did some part of him truly roam the Wild West? Either way, his legend continues to gallop across the pages of history, keeping the spirit of the frontier alive. After years of defying the odds and bending the very laws of nature, Pecos Bill finally decided it was time to ride off into the sunset, literally. With a farewell that only a legend could pull off, he mounted his trusty steed and galloped into the sky, leaving behind nothing but a trail of dust and a legacy of outlandish adventures. Some say he's still out there, his spirit lingering in every wild, untamed corner of the West, where the wind howls and the frontier remains as fierce as ever. For the Wild West legend of Bigfoot, while many think of Bigfoot as a modern-day myth fueled by grainy photographs and blurry-eyed witnesses, this elusive creature had already secured its place in frontier folklore long before the age of cameras. Bigfoot's origins trace back to Native American legends, with numerous tribes passing down stories of an enormous, ape-like being lurking in the wilderness. The term Sasquatch comes from the Salish word Saskits, meaning wild man. As settlers pushed westward in the mid-19th century, reports of encounters with a towering, shaggy creature began to spread. These are not the ramblings of superstitious travelers, but first-hand accounts from seasoned frontiersmen, hard-nosed explorers, and trappers who claimed to have seen footprints the size of horse hooves and heard bone-chilling howls that sent wolves scattering into the night. The legend of Bigfoot in the Wild West wasn't just another campfire tale. It was a full-blown phenomenon. Some stories spoke of gold miners stumbling upon a cave brimming with berries and nuts, as if the enormous beast had been stockpiling supplies. Other accounts told of settlers abandoning their homesteads in sheer terror after hearing blood-curdling cries and the sound of trees crashing to the ground, as if something massive was tearing through the forest. These were not timid folk. They had braved the perils of the frontier. So when even they were spooked, it only deepened the legend's intrigue. 5. The haunted Bullock Hotel of Deadwood. Among the many eerie tales of the Wild West, few are as infamous as the spectral happenings at the Bullock Hotel in Deadwood, South Dakota. Built by the legendary lawman Seth Bullock in 1895, the hotel was meant to offer luxury to weary travelers. Instead, it became notorious for its ghostly guests, some of whom never checked out. Seth Bullock, the man, responsible for bringing law and order to Deadwood, likely never intended for his grand establishment to become a paranormal hotspot. Yet, from a moment the hotel opened, strange occurrences began to unfold. Some claim it's Bullock himself who lingers within the halls, still keeping a watchful eye over his investment. Guests and employees alike have reported glimpses of Bullock's ghost, always clad in his signature black suit, prowling the hallways with a stern, disapproving glare. Some believe he's ensuring the hotel is run properly. Others say he's just annoyed that no one follows his advice. The hotel ballroom is infamous for its ghostly gatherings. Visitors have heard the faint strains of piano music and the distant clinking of glasses, as if an otherworldly celebration is eternally underway. Some say the spirits of long-gone revelers refuse to let the party end, while others suspect the echoes of old poker games still linger in the walls. The hotel is also plagued by unsettling noises, phantom footsteps in empty corridors, doors swinging open on their own, and whispers from unseen mouths. One night, a startled hotel clerk heard a commotion coming from an unoccupied room. When he went to investigate, a voice greeted him from the darkness. "We're just having a little party." He promptly abandoned his post for the night. 6. The Headless Horseman of the West. El Muerto, deep in the lawless badlands of Texas and northern Mexico, one legend stands out among the rest: the tale of El Muerto, the Dead One. According to frontier folklore, El Muerto was once a ruthless bandit whose crimes were so notorious that death itself refused to grant him peace. As the story goes, he met a brutal end at the hands of vengeful lawmen or rival outlaws who decapitated him as a warning to others. But instead of fading into history, his spirit rose again, forever cursed to ride the plains as a headless horseman, seeking vengeance against those who crossed his path. It was said that El Muerto rode only at night, his stallion's thundering hooves striking terror into all who heard them. A glimpse of the headless rider was believed to be an omen of certain doom. If you saw him, legend had it that death would soon come knocking. In 1917, a couple traveling by covered wagon near San Diego, Texas, set up camp for the night. As they sat by their fire, a massive gray stallion charged past them, its rider missing his head, yet screaming, "It is mine! It is all mine!" The chilling sight left them shaken, and they hurried away at dawn. Even decades later, in 1969, reports of a headless horseman near Freer, Texas, reignited the legend, ensuring that El Muerto's ghostly presence still haunted the land. 7. The death ship of the Platte River. During the 1800s, as pioneers and gold seekers journeyed west, the Platte River became an essential route and a stage for one of the most terrifying ghost stories of the era. Travelers spoke of a cursed steamboat, sometimes called Lady Luck or the Devil's Own, doomed to sail the waters for eternity. This wasn't just another riverboat tale. Those who claimed to have seen the vessel described an eerie, mist-shrouded apparition drifting silently along the river. Its masts were coated in frost, its tattered sails glowing an unnatural shade of pale blue, and its spectral crew frozen in time. The most chilling part of the story? Every time the death ship appeared, it was said to foreshadow an imminent death. Witnesses who saw the ghostly crew standing over a covered body on the deck soon recognized the face beneath the shroud. It was always someone they knew. The first recorded sighting came in 1862, when a trapper named Leon Weber spotted the ship. He later identified the body as his own and died that same day. In 1887, a cattleman named Gene Wilson witnessed the ship and saw the lifeless face of his wife beneath the shroud. She passed away before sundown. And in 1903, while chopping wood by the river, a man named Victor Hybe beheld the spectral vessel. The body on deck? That of his closest friend, who perished hours later. To this day, those who travel along the Platte River swear that on certain fog-laden nights, an icy mist rises from the water. And if you're unlucky enough to see the death ship drifting past, you might just glimpse a familiar face lying beneath its ghostly shroud. 8. The Bandit Ghoul of 6 Mile Canyon. In the lawless days of the Wild West, few outlaws were as slippery as Big Jack. His name alone was enough to send a shiver down a sheriff's spine, and 6 Mile Canyon became his personal domain, a rugged, desolate stretch of land where he evaded capture time and time again. As elusive as a coyote in the moonlight and twice as cunning, Big Jack always seemed one step ahead of the law. But even the luckiest outlaw eventually finds himself cornered. After years of toying with frontier justice, Big Jack's run came to a violent end in a standoff with a posse of determined lawmen. Under the desert stars, the canyon walls echoed with gunfire, and by dawn, Big Jack lay dead in the dust. That should have been the end of his legend. Except it wasn't. Death, it seemed, had little effect on the notorious bandit. While his body was buried, his spirit refused to rest. Instead of fading into history, he remained tethered to 6 Mile Canyon, earning the chilling nickname, the Bandit Ghoul. Soon after his demise, eerie sightings began to spread. Travelers spoke of phantom lanterns flickering in the darkness, appearing for a brief moment before vanishing as if guiding the lost, or leading them into a trap. Others swore they heard the unmistakable clink of spurs, though no rider was in sight. The most unsettling reports came from those who heard laughter, deep, raucous laughter echoing through the canyon walls when no living soul was present. And then there was the mystery of the stolen supplies. One night, a group of gold miners awoke to find their food, tools, and gear missing. But rather than being completely lost, the stolen goods were arranged in the dirt outside their camp. When they took a closer look, their blood ran cold. The items were laid out to spell a single taunting word, gotcha. Even in death, Big Jack hadn't lost his sense of humor. 9. The haunted Jesse James farm. While 6 Mile Canyon had its own ghostly outlaw, Missouri had a legend of its own. The restless specter of Jesse James. Tucked away in Kearney, Missouri, the Jesse James farm was more than just a homestead. It was a retreat of one of the most infamous outlaws in American history, a place where he had hoped to find peace after a lifetime of bank heists, train robberies, and narrow escapes. But peace was never in the cards for Jesse James. On April 3rd, 1882, inside his own home, Jesse met a fate far more treacherous than any shootout. Betrayed by his own gang member, Bob Ford. With his back turned, adjusting a picture on the wall, Jesse was shot in the head. The legend of Jesse James ended in cold-blooded murder. Or it did it. From that day forward, the Jesse James farm took on a chilling new reputation. No longer just a historical landmark, it became a place where the past refused to stay buried. Visitors and staff reported strange occurrences, sudden cold spots, the feeling of being watched, and the unexplained creaking of floorboards when no one was there. But the most haunting encounters revolved around Jesse himself. Some believe that Jesse's restless spirit still roams the farm, perhaps searching for something long lost, hidden gold, unfinished business, or justice that never came. Others claim to have seen shadowy figures lurking near the house, only for them to vanish when approached. The old farmhouse is said to be especially active. Objects have been seen moving on their own, lanterns flicker without cause, and some visitors report the distinct sound of spurs jangling in the dead of night, as if Jesse himself were still pacing through his former home. Some say these disturbances are Jesse's own doing, while others whisper that the spirits of those wronged by him in life have returned, ensuring that the notorious outlaw will never find peace. The Wild West, a land of legends, superstitions, and specters, from the ghostly cackles of Big Jack in 6 Mile Canyon to the lingering presence of Jesse James in Missouri. The Wild West was more than just a battleground for outlaws and lawmen. It was a place where legends never truly died. Whether it was phantom riders, haunted hideouts, or spirits seeking vengeance, the frontier held stories that blurred the line between history and the supernatural. Even today, those who dare to wander these sites at night might just hear the distant echo of spurs, the flickering of unseen lanterns, or the whisper of a long-forgotten outlaw, still riding the trails of the West. So, if you ever find yourself alone in the canyons of Nevada, or standing outside an old Missouri farmhouse, listen carefully. You might just hear Big Jack laughing in the shadows, or the faint sound of Jesse James' ghostly boots walking across his land. And in the Wild West, where superstition and survival went hand in hand, one thing was certain: the dead didn't always stay dead.